Let's begin with a question that most people never dare to ask. Do you actually believe in truth, or do you believe in what makes you feel safe? The answer is more unsettling than it appears, because you don't see reality as it is. You see it as your mind allows you to see it, through layers of bias, defense, and neurological filtering that prioritize psychological safety over accuracy. In other words, you believe what helps your identity survive, not what helps it evolve. And this isn't a philosophical idea. It's a scientific, neurological, and behavioral reality backed by decades of research in cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics. Let's abandon the comforting illusion. Despite our collective faith in logic, facts, and rationality, the human brain is not built to discover truth. It is not an impartial machine. It is not a clean processor of data. It is a storytelling organ, shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, designed not to tell you what is, but to tell you what fits, what maintains your inner world structure, what protects your psychological coherence, what preserves your sense of self. In short, your brain is not a seeker of truth. It is a builder of meaning. You're not as concerned with what is true as you are with what is internally consistent. This isn't a flaw, it's biology. The brain evolved to preserve mental coherence above all else because coherence means survival. Think of it this way: when your tribe believed in the rain god, doubting that belief could get you exiled. When your family passed down a worldview, questioning it could sever your emotional bond. When your inner narrative says, "I'm a good person," accepting evidence to the contrary feels unbearable. So, what does the brain do? It adapts. It doesn't update your beliefs. It updates your perception of reality. It twists, filters, distorts, whatever it must to keep the story intact. That story is called your identity, and your brain will protect it at all costs. Your beliefs live in networks of neural pathways, like trails in a forest carved by repetition and emotion. Every time you think, act, or react in a familiar way, you reinforce that trail. Challenge the belief, and the brain responds with threat signals. Increased cortisol, stress hormone. Amygdala activation, fight or flight. Prefrontal cortex suppression, logical reasoning shuts down. In other words, you literally become less rational when your beliefs are threatened. You don't see the bars, you don't feel the chains, because they were built inside you, and they feel like home. You believe in free will, you believe in logic, you believe your views are well-reasoned, but underneath those beliefs are layers of protection, shaped by trauma, attachment, cultural narratives, and emotional needs. You believe what keeps you connected to your tribe. You believe what protects you from shame. You believe what shields you from existential terror. Most of what you believe is not reasoned through. It's inherited, conditioned, or emotionally adopted and then defended like sacred truth. Your religious beliefs, your political views, your moral stances, your sense of identity, all of these were shaped before you had the capacity to critically evaluate them. And now, they are protected by the architecture of your mind, not because they're true, but because losing them would feel like death. Because truth doesn't just challenge ideas, it threatens the self. Your belief system is not a reflection of truth, it's a reflection of what your nervous system can tolerate. Let's say someone presents undeniable evidence that your relationship is toxic, or that your career path was chosen out of fear, or that your worldview is built on outdated assumptions. Does your mind calmly adjust? No, it revolts. It denies. It attacks. It rationalizes. It retreats into defensive storytelling. You say, "It's not that bad. I'm just being emotional. They don't understand me. Maybe it's true, but it's too late now." Your brain isn't weighing truth. It's running interference to protect the version of you that you've constructed over a lifetime. And the more emotionally invested you are in that version, the more violent the reaction when it's threatened. This is why growth is so rare, because real growth means allowing parts of you to die, and your brain doesn't want to die, not even metaphorically. It wants to stay consistent, even if that consistency is built on suffering, lies, denial, or delusion. So you'll resist the breakup, you'll dismiss the new idea, you'll sabotage the opportunity, not because you don't know better, but because the truth feels unsafe. You don't change when you learn something new. You change when your identity becomes too painful to maintain. And that moment, it often comes not with clarity, but collapse. Let's dismantle the illusion of rationality. You don't see reality as it is. You see it as your mind needs it to be, safe, consistent, non-threatening to your identity. This is not philosophy. It's psychological fact backed by decades of research. Your brain, faced with emotional threat, doesn't choose clarity. It chooses protection. and it does so using three core mechanisms: automatic, invisible, and disturbingly efficient. Let's expose them. First, confirmation bias. You only see what agrees with you. When you hold a belief, any belief, your brain begins building a filter around it. That filter becomes a lens through which all new information is processed. If it fits your narrative, it gets in. If it challenges your narrative, it gets distorted, dismissed, or deleted altogether. This is not conscious, it's automatic. It's not because you're close-minded. It's because your psychological equilibrium depends on consistency. The moment your core beliefs are threatened, your brain interprets that threat the same way it interprets physical danger. It triggers stress, fight or flight, emotional resistance. In one famous experiment on capital punishment, researchers gave participants mixed evidence, some supporting, some contradicting their stance. Instead of re-evaluating, people dug deeper into their original position. Pro-death penalty readers became more pro. Anti-death penalty readers became more anti. They weren't engaging to grow, they were engaging to validate. The shocking result? The better educated the participant, the better they were at rationalizing their bias. In other words, intelligence doesn't protect you from bias, it just makes you better at defending it. Because your mind doesn't crave truth, it craves being right, because being right feels like being safe. Second, motivated reasoning. This is the mental gymnastics you perform, without knowing it, when reality threatens your ego. You don't evaluate facts objectively. You evaluate them in light of what you want to be true. The logic feels clean, but the engine is emotional. Fear, pride, guilt, insecurity, shame, identity preservation. When someone presents a counter-argument to your worldview, notice what happens. You don't ask, is this valid? You ask, what's wrong with it? You search for flaws, not to understand but to survive. You say things like, they're just biased. That's not the full context. They're just trying to manipulate me. That's just their opinion. You don't explore their point, you defend your position, even when it's no longer defensible. It feels like logic. It sounds like critical thinking, but it's not. It's emotional armor masquerading as intellect. Because if you accepted their perspective, what would you lose? Your moral high ground, your identity as the victim, the story that justifies your pain, the worldview that's kept you safe for decades? Your reasoning isn't faulty, it's programmed for protection. You're not thinking to understand, you're thinking to survive being wrong. Third, cognitive dissonance. This is the gut-twisting tension that happens when your behavior and beliefs are at war. You know smoking is killing you, but you light the cigarette. You know your partner is emotionally unavailable, but you stay. You know your job is draining your soul, but you convince yourself it's secure. That uncomfortable internal conflict? That's dissonance, and the brain hates it. It's like a glitch in the system. And the default solution isn't to change the behavior, it's to change the story. You don't quit smoking. You say, I'll cut down soon. You don't leave the relationship. You say, at least they're not cheating. You don't leave the job. You say, better the devil you know. Why? Because behavior change requires action, but belief change requires nothing, just a little self-deception. Leon Festinger's 1957 study proved this elegantly. Participants were asked to lie about a boring task. Some were paid $20, others were paid $1. Oddly, those paid less were more likely to believe their own lie. Why? Because $1 wasn't enough to justify the deception, so they rewrote their experience to reduce the dissonance. They didn't want to feel like liars, so they became believers. This is happening all the time. You stay in the relationship because no one's perfect. You tolerate disrespect because they didn't mean it. You keep a toxic habit because it's not that bad. You downplay your dream because real life doesn't work that way. You're not rejecting reality. You're avoiding emotional collapse. Because admitting the truth would demand a response you're not ready to give. Put these three mechanisms together, and what do you have? A brain masterfully designed to trap you in safe illusion. You live inside a filtered reality, where evidence is curated, logic is emotionally biased, and inner tension is sedated by narrative editing. You think you're seeing clearly, but you're only seeing what your nervous system can handle. This isn't your fault, but it is your prison, because if you're only ever believing what's safe to believe, you'll never grow, you'll never break patterns, you'll never live a life that's real. You'll just replay the same inner script over and over, convinced it's truth, because it's familiar. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to see the illusion at all. If you're brave enough to face this, you must learn to welcome dissonance, not run from it. You must seek out the truth that hurts, not the lie that soothes. You must be willing to say, maybe everything I believed was a psychological defense, and now, I'm ready to look anyway. That's not weakness, that's mental revolution, and it's the only way to become free. Recognize that discomfort is data. That sting you feel when someone challenges you? It's not an attack. It's a signal that your ego is holding something fragile. Ask, what would I have to give up if this were true? Would you lose status, love, stability, your self-image? Trace the real cost of accepting new truth. Normalize ego death. Growth requires identity rupture. Let the outdated version die. Mourn it if you must, but don't protect a lie just because it feels like home. Separate truth from comfort. They rarely coexist. The more comfortable the belief, the more likely it's not rooted in reality, but in psychological self-soothing. Your brain will protect your beliefs like they're oxygen. But sometimes it's not protecting you, it's protecting a story you were never meant to keep living. You don't believe what's true, you believe what your nervous system can handle. You believe what keeps the story intact. You believe what makes you feel safe. But safety is not freedom, comfort is not truth. And the life you want won't begin until the one built on illusion burns to the ground. Real-world examples of the safe lie. Example 1. The happy marriage. You tell everyone you're fine, but you haven't felt seen or desired in years. Why stay? Because truth would mean admitting you've invested decades in a lie, and you're too scared to start over. Example 2. The stable career. You earn well, people respect you, but you're hollow inside. Why stay? Because the truth would reveal you built your life chasing status, not purpose, and the silence terrifies you. Example 3. The spiritual persona. You meditate, post affirmations, but you can't handle conflict, can't set boundaries, can't feel your anger. Why? Because your version of peace is a mask, one that hides unresolved trauma. In each case, the brain protects the narrative, because the truth would shatter the role you've played, and most people would rather stay in pain than lose the performance. What makes this trap so dangerous is you don't know you're in it. The beliefs feel natural, the biases feel justified, the logic feels sound, but all of it is happening underneath awareness, which is why self-deception is so powerful, and so difficult to escape. It's not just the lies you tell others, it's the ones you tell yourself so convincingly, you forget they're lies at all. How to begin escaping the belief prison. Slow down your certainty. The more confident you are that you're right, the more likely you're defending, not discovering. Ask, when did I start believing this, and who gave it to me? Trace your beliefs back to their origin. Most were adopted, not chosen. Seek cognitive dissonance, not comfort. The discomfort is where growth begins. Sit in it, don't fix it, feel it. Separate truth from identity. You can change your mind without destroying yourself. Who you are is not your ideas. You are the space those ideas move through. You don't believe what's true. You believe what makes you feel safe. Not because you're irrational, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system was built for survival, not for truth. And that's not your fault, it's your biology. Your brain, specifically the limbic system and the amygdala, is wired to detect threats. But a threat isn't just a predator or physical danger. In the modern world, your brain now responds just as intensely to psychological threats. Things like contradiction, identity crisis, shame, abandonment, or rejection. When you encounter a truth that challenges your worldview, whether it's about your relationship, your self-worth, your beliefs, your past, your brain interprets it as a threat to coherence. And coherence is survival. So what does the brain do? It activates the stress response. Cortisol rises, adrenaline spikes, logical reasoning, the prefrontal cortex temporarily shuts down. And in that moment, your brain doesn't seek to understand. It seeks to protect. This is where confirmation bias kicks in, seeking only information that aligns with your current beliefs. It's where motivated reasoning distorts logic to suit emotional needs. It's where cognitive dissonance rewrites your memory, your interpretation of events, even your moral compass, just to reduce internal discomfort. In evolutionary terms, truth is optional. Stability is essential. Your ancestors didn't survive by constantly questioning their tribe, challenging social norms, or reinventing themselves daily. They survived by conforming, by maintaining internal harmony, by sticking to stories that kept them emotionally and socially safe. So yes, your brain lies to you, but not out of malice, out of protection. It tells you, you're fine. This is just how life is. You're not good enough to change. Don't ask that question, you might not like the answer. These aren't thoughts, they're defense mechanisms. And they were necessary once. Growth begins the moment you stop protecting the false self and start listening to the truth underneath the fear. And no, freedom isn't found in comfort. Comfort is the velvet coffin. It lulls you into inertia, it decorates the prison, it silences the soul. Real freedom lives in the wreckage of the stories you were brave enough to abandon, in the grief of realizing what was never real, in the terrifying beauty of rebuilding your identity not from fear but from truth. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only thing that was ever real.